Welcome back to Speak Out with Christine Jurgen. I am your host, Christine Jurgen. Today, I have on my dear friend, Sabrina Kosmas, who is the Senior Director of Outreach over at PragerU. She handles a lot of PR for them and the PragerU personality. She does a lot of work with them. She's great. She's got to pay attention to culture and politics and everything. So she's got like a good read on pretty much everything that's going on. And she can also view it from the PR perspective. So I wanted to have her on to basically break down what's going on with Ballerina Farm. If you guys have any idea what's going on with that, if you don't, you're going to hear about it. It's kind of essentially feminists saying that anybody who wants to be a mother or a wife or stay home with their children is a victim of the patriarchy and they are oppressed or held hostage or whatever. It's pretty ridiculous. So Sabrina's coming on. She's going to kind of break this down with us. We're also talking about toxic mom culture, motherhood in general, balancing being a working mom and having children and how to prioritize different things to make it all work. I think you guys are going to love her. She is one of my favorite follows on social media, mostly because we have like a very similar sense of humor and love for memes. So there's that. But you guys, I really do think we'll love her, and we're going to just jump right into it. Sabrina, thank you so much for joining the show. I'm really excited to have you. We've been friends on social media for a long time, and so this is really fun to be able to get you on here and pick your brain about a few things that I'm really curious about what's going on. So for those who might not be familiar with you, you work for PragerU. Tell us a little about what you do, what PragerU is, and what you do with PragerU.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Christine. I'm so excited. I mean, it's like basically catching up with a friend at this point. But yeah, so I am our Senior Director of Outreach, and what that means is I handle essentially all of our PR, some of our guest outreach. I assist other departments with different special projects, but pretty much anything regarding press, whether that is our inside talent going on outside shows or managing when, publications, my favorite mainstream media, reaches out to us. I'm the one that facilitates and drafts responses and all that jazz. So a little bit of everything.
What's like, okay, so when I think of PR anyway, I always think of like they're, putting out fires, and there's like other stuff that's going on as well. But what's like one of the most memorable fires, so to speak, that maybe you had to put out?
Ooh, we haven't had too many fires, at least that people know of on the outside. I usually try to stop things on the inside when I see them kind of coming through. So I don't want to get into too much trouble detailing those. But
or something that maybe the mainstream media comes at you guys for because they think that you're doing something that's totally horrific, and you're like, no, actually, give us something that we can, like a little inside scoop.
Definitely. One of the proudest moments is probably when the mainstream media will try to depict us as having said something a certain way. And, we are very good about, on our end, recording when we are working with journalists, just because unfortunately with a lot of left-leaning outlets, we don't feel very confident that they're going to actually portray us correctly. Yeah. So we've had situations where we either have press that have twisted what someone on our team has said, and we've been able to typically back it, what they were actually said, and we've gotten corrections issued. So that's always, as a PR person, that's always kind of a proud moment to kind of stand your ground and defend yourself. Another thing too, so Vice News did a pretty big piece on us a couple years ago, and it was my first big press hit in this position. I was so incredibly anxious and nervous. We brought in a whole camera crew of people that I can imagine probably don't like us very much. And to bring them in and this reporter who is notoriously pretty far left. And then it was funny because she came in and we ended up having a great day together, like really connected to the point where I was nervous, just being the skeptic of mainstream media that I am, that she was going to take this wonderful day that we all had together and twist it into something that it wasn't. And what we thought was going to be a hit piece actually ended up being very complimentary of us and on Vice, of all places. So that was one of the proudest moments. And it was funny because her and I kind of connected on the level of being moms and working moms, which was kind of funny. Pretty much when the cameras weren't rolling, her and I would just like have these conversations on the side about parenthood, and our kids are similar ages, and like that day just did not go as expected, and it ended up being a really big win for us, which was kind of exciting.
No, that's awesome. I feel like we've gotten to such a place with media where it's like you're almost untrusting of anybody. I mean, these days it's like the independent journalists that are sharing the truth, it seems. And even there are right-leaning organizations as well where you're kind of like, I don't know. But it's just journalism as a whole, I feel like has kind of gone down the drain. But you do this other thing, which I love because your sense of humor is so fun, on your social media, and you're gaining a following as well. And you do unsolicited PR, which is so funny. Tell me a couple of like things that you've done with unsolicited PR, like what you're doing on social media. Because your sense of humor is like right on par with mine.
Oh my gosh, I appreciate that. I'm glad that someone else is laughing because I just feel like I'm making myself crack up half the time. So if I know other people are enjoying it too, I'm going to keep doing it. But yeah, so, I give our team internally so much unsolicited PR advice. They won't even ask for advice and I'm giving it. So I'll see things in pop culture or politics where I just see things that are executed so poorly that I'm like, it could have been done differently. And half the time it's honestly kind of jovial. And so I like to post those. For example, I don't know if you remember when Lizzo got canceled. This is like going so off the deep end, but when Lizzo got soft canceled, but it wasn't really a cancellation because she's still out and about, but she got soft canceled last year for apparently body shaming her background dancers and stuff. And this was the same week that this article went viral that people who were in the fitness industry or people that care about their health and wellness typically are right-wing extremists. Like, I can't remember the publication, but that was essentially the piece that they published. And so I joked around how, she had some beef with Candace Owens. She ended up watching Candace Owens and went down the rabbit hole, Ben Shapiro, PragerU, and she was actually just becoming a right-wing extremist who cared about body image now. And she should use that because people are okay with people being canceled when they're right-wing, and then she could always just redeem herself and become a liberal again. Now that's all a total joke, but I'll do some serious ones too sometimes, like especially now with the election. I see certain campaign things that I'm like, could have been better executed this way, or don't really understand the intention behind this. And so I'll sometimes do some serious analysis on there too.
I mean, honestly, I see it like, I don't know if this is your plan or not, but I see it like turning into something like that would be like the best podcast show, like unsolicited PR advice or, whatever, something like that. I think you could do so much with it. But as a PR person, and with this unsolicited PR advice and kind of breaking down what's going on in culture, what you've done, you talked a little bit, which I found so interesting, about Hannah Nealand, I think is her name, from Ballerina Farm. And I didn't really pay attention to it at first because she's been like, I feel like everybody's always angry at her, like always mad. And kind of tell everybody before we like really dive into it, who is Hannah Nealand? What is Ballerina Farm? And then we'll get into like why everybody's up in arms.
Absolutely. So it's so funny that you say that because a year ago, that's the only reason I found her was I kept seeing her pop up in the news and on social media and people seemed angry with her and I didn't understand why. So that kind of took me down the rabbit hole. And it's not really much of a rabbit hole, to be honest. It's a pretty shallow one just because like she is pretty much who she says she is on social media, but people refuse to believe it. So she is a professionally trained ballerina. She is Mormon and she has 8 children. They live on a beautiful farm and they homestead out in Utah, her and her husband. Her husband is, I don't know if it's appropriate to say, but the heir of JetBlue. I don't know if that's the correct term, if his father founded JetBlue, and some other airlines. So they come from quite a bit of money. They were living a pretty lavish life in New York when they decided that they wanted to give it all up to go into homesteading and start a farm, hence Ballerina Farm. So she is pretty much the quintessential trad wife on social media in many ways, and then in other ways, not at all. But she gave up her ballet career, although she still does it as a hobby. I think her daughters all still do ballet as well. So now she's got 8 kids. And so they homeschool all of them. She works on the farm. She's raising all of her kids herself. And the reason that I even got involved with defending her online is because of the same thing you mentioned. I kept seeing all these angry reactions especially from predominantly feminists online who just could not believe that this woman could be doing it all, that she could be working, that she could be raising her kids, 8 kids all by herself and working on the farm. And so she was getting a lot of heat online because people were convinced that she had a whole team of nannies and videographers behind her and that she was putting on this fake life for everyone on social media. So, and even if she did, I just didn't see the problem with it. Unfortunately, there seems to be a very big trend of women who get very discouraged by women who seem to be succeeding, not only in their careers, but especially when it comes to motherhood. So I kind of felt like this need to start defending her online. I hadn't even really followed her that closely before this, and now I've just become like an advocate of hers, which is kind of silly, but yeah.
It's so interesting because you just said something right there that like really clicked in my head. It's like women almost feel insecure if they're not doing as much as somebody else. And it's like, that's an us problem. That's not a her problem. Like if she's doing a lot and she's successful at it, good for her. If you're not getting as much done, either you're like you're not using your time wisely, or maybe you're just not in that season of life. Like I'm not going to demonize somebody who, if you just had a newborn or surgery or something, or you got other things going on, like to me, you don't have to do as much as the next person, but if you want to do as much as the next person, then like figure out a way to get there, like these are steps that you can take. So it's just interesting to me that I find a lot of it when people freak out about this kind of stuff is more of an insecurity than it has something to say about us versus about her, right?
100%.
So like one of the first things I saw about people getting mad about was her doing a pageant. Dive into that like a little bit. I don't know if you remember that one. That's not the most recent thing that people are mad about. Well, I guess the first thing I heard was like, oh, they're actually millionaires. Everybody was mad at that. But it's like, okay, and like
they
there's plenty
chose
of
to spend
millionaires
their
that
money
you follow on social media.
Yeah. They chose to spend their money doing something
there's
wholesome.
Celebrities you follow, who cares? Yeah, it's so ridiculous. So then, like the next thing I see flare up has to do with the pageant. Tell me about the pageant.
Yeah, so actually that was probably my first video about her that went semi-viral was regarding the pageant. So she had just given birth to a baby 12 days before she competed in Mrs. America, and that obviously outraged women everywhere. And unfortunately, not even just feminists, but a lot of mothers online that just, I think it does come from insecurity. I think you totally nailed it, where rather than seeing a mom who's thriving in motherhood and especially postpartum being able to accomplish things that she set out to do before she had children, that should be an accomplishment and something that should be praised, but she was getting torn apart online. And I just felt like I was in the minority on this mindset where I thought it was something to really like look up to. I mean, at that point I think when I made this video, I was about 9 months postpartum myself. I was definitely not competing in a pageant, but it motivated me. The next day I was like, well, I have to get up early to go to the gym. If she can do this 12 days postpartum, I can go to the gym 9 months postpartum.
Right.
So I think there's just a difference in mindset with a lot of moms, unfortunately, and a lot of women.
No, it's interesting to me because this was what, her 8th baby that this happened with. So to me, and I'm thinking about it, and part of me was like, oh gosh, like that's a lot to do 12 days postpartum. But at the same time, when you've had that many kids, like you don't really get the luxury anymore of just like maybe your first baby, you're in bed a little bit longer. There's lots of cuddles, maybe even second baby, you're in bed, dad's taking care of the next baby or, the toddler. But like once you had that many kids, you've done it so many times that it's almost like second nature, and you get up and you keep going. I really think that, and I say this as me personally, I have milked motherhood when I have a baby. I'm like, no, I can't. Can you make dinner tonight? Like I've got the baby, I'm nursing, when really I probably could have, especially when you have a newborn, and like, that's okay. But I also know that there are women who, when you've had tons of kids, you get up and you do it. You don't have the luxury to just sit around necessarily. And I feel like, although she was going to a pageant, she wasn't just sitting around or, cooking dinner or anything, but I don't think it was that big of a deal. And she had the baby with her. That was the biggest thing. I was like, if you left the baby, I might be able to understand, but she's like getting her makeup done, holding her baby, breastfeeding her baby. It just is mind-boggling to me that people are so angry at that.
Absolutely. You totally nailed it. And that's the thing, is a lot of people were so outraged because they said that she was depicting a false sense of motherhood on social media and that it was unrealistic when it was just her reality. And if you're looking to go on social media and see your own reality in everything you see on social media, you're not going to be a happy person because everyone's lives look so incredibly different. Then you should probably get off social media because everyone's life looks so different. Yeah. I totally agree.
Okay, so then she does this pageant, and then more recently there's this, big hoopla with her, and there's a journalist who comes out from London and spends a day with her, right?
Yeah.
Like what happened with all of that? How did this blow up? This is like probably the biggest blow up that I've seen. And people are still talking about it today, to the point where she felt like she had to come out and respond to all of the criticism.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially a reporter from The Times, which I believe is a UK publication, came out to visit them and did a whole expose. She spent the whole day with them. And I believe they've done some press before, but I don't know if they've done an exclusive that was this detailed and long prior. So they invite this woman into their home, onto their ranch farm. I guess we call it a farm. Onto their farm.
Which is really intimate.
Yeah, super intimate. She's with the family the whole day. I mean, you can even see, I think Hannah had like vlogged from her perspective the day and how it was going, and even just her getting ready that morning. And, you know, she's got the kids running around. She's got 8 kids. Like, they're running around. They're all trying to get ready for a photo shoot at the end of the day. She's talking with the reporter. Her husband's there for most of it, but he's also hopping off and taking phone calls. Anyways, so this reporter spends the whole day with them, writes a piece about their life, and the way that it comes off is the most obvious feminist bias that I've probably ever seen in a publication covering any women. And I think this is where I get very passionate about this topic, is I see firsthand in my career how anyone with remotely traditional values is treated by the media. There's always this constant narrative of either, you know, if you're a conservative woman, you are either oppressed, you are either brainwashed into believing what the patriarchy has taught you, all these crazy narratives, just because you don't follow the feminist status quo. And obviously, I don't even want to say conservative in her case, because we don't even know what her politics are. She's not a political person at all, but they're trying to make her political, which is also unfair to her. So anyways, this piece comes out, basically talks about how the main themes are that her husband is extremely oppressive, was very domineering during the interview. She was trying to say certain things and under her breath was telling the reporter one thing so her husband wouldn't hear. Also making it sound like, you know, it's very chaotic in that household because of how many children there are. And, you know, this woman is so exhausted because she doesn't have help, and they have all the resources in the world, yet they don't have nannies and they don't have cooks and help and a cleaning lady. I mean, they may, but the reporter references that they don't have help when clearly this woman needs it because of her husband putting this pressure on her to do it all, which is pretty unfair in a lot of ways, even if you don't know this woman. I mean, she's someone with a very large platform. She's clearly very intelligent. She's been able to market her lifestyle in such an impressive way. I think she has, like, across all her social media platforms, over 20 million followers. Like, she's pretty intelligent. So to undermine her and assume that she's in this, you know, prisoner scenario in her own house is a little unfair, I thought. So that was essentially how the article came out. Made the whole family look pretty bad and made her look like a victim, made it seem like he made her give up ballet to have all these kids that she wasn't ready to have. And all these people online just ate it up. All these feminists that have spent the last however many year and a half that I've probably been following any stories about her, they've spent the last year and a half painting her out to be a total villain in the motherhood movement. And then now all of a sudden she is a victim of this oppressive patriarchy that is caused by her husband. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So there was a lot of backlash online about the article. A few of us were really vocal about, you know, maybe let's give this woman some credit. She's pretty intelligent. Maybe she does have some autonomy over her life and chose to put her family and her faith and their business with this farm above some of her other career aspirations. And that's okay. Yeah. Any moms know that we often do that. I mean, you're a mom of 3. I'm a mom of 2. I'm sure there's plenty of things we would love to do some days that we put to the side because we put our families first. And that's not 100%. Such a crime. Yeah. So,
no, you're right. So it's basically like feminism has demonized motherhood and being a wife so much that they're completely convinced that this woman's a hostage in her own home.
Yeah, completely. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. And so it got to the point where, you know, she finally came out and made a statement. But what was interesting was before she even made a statement on her social media, this reporter who just had this big expose that went completely viral ended up coming up a few days later and published a follow-up article. And a lot of people haven't even bothered to read or see the follow-up article. But it's very interesting because there's a complete change in tone about the whole thing, a lot more forgiving and positive about her husband and her decision to pursue motherhood and this alternative lifestyle than what she may have wanted to do when she was at Juilliard. So it was funny because there was a second article that this this reporter ended up writing.
Do you think that was because of backlash from, mothers saying, what are you talking about? This is crazy.
I think that's part of it. And if I were to guess, my unsolicited PR insight would probably be, I have a feeling that legally they probably said something to this reporter, because I think that this reporter had a likely defamation lawsuit on her hands, because it was pretty jarring how bad it made the husband look. Personally, that's what I would think, but I don't know. I don't have any insight on this.
Yeah.
I
Well,
have
weren't
no
there,
idea.
I mean, she came, like there were, and I didn't dive too deeply into it, so I don't know how many like excerpts came out, but didn't the reporter leak some of the, not leak, I guess, share some of the excerpts from the actual interview so you can hear
The
them
audio?
talking?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it says, there was something that I heard in there, where the husband was like basically saying, we don't have to do this, like it's totally up to you kind of thing. And she decided, like they mutually agreed on something, but the reporter made it sound like it was just his decision. And then when she released the audio, you can tell like they both mutually agreed. And she still, even though they said they mutually agreed on something, she made it sound like it was his fault.
100%. So this is where the timeline gets super juicy with this. Sorry, I'm going to talk about this like I'm talking about Real Housewives, because it's all so juicy how it all kind of pieces together. So the original article comes out. There's about a week of backlash. And I have to imagine after the article came out that this family said, this is ridiculous. We're saying something about this, because it is defamatory towards especially the husband.
Yeah.
And also for their business. I have to imagine that has a business implication if people read this article and think that they're ordering food from a house with a lot of issues behind closed doors. So anyway, so about a week goes by between the initial article and then all of a sudden the second article and an audio recording are released by the Times, which is very odd. You would think that they would release the audio recording with the first article, but now the second article has a much more positive tone regarding the husband. And then I think they released that specifically to show that Hannah, go figure, does have autonomy over her own life and her own family. And that her husband did give her the option if she wanted to continue to pursue dance, but they decided to pursue this dream of owning this farm together. So I thought the timing was interesting.
It's super interesting, and it's bizarre. There was, when I'm doing a little bit of research on her, I saw this video that people were sharing where she was saying like she wanted a trip to Greece for her birthday, and she's opening a box, and it's like, is it a trip to Greece? Is it a trip to Greece? And it's an apron, like an egg collecting apron, and everybody's up in arms because they gave her something that is like basically here's something to do more work, and it's not this trip to Greece that she wants. And in my mind, like I didn't view it that way. I viewed it as like, we have so much money, we can do whatever we want. If you want a trip to Greece, we'll book a trip to Greece. I mean, my dad owns or founded JetBlue. Like that's a non-issue. We can go to Greece. But here's like something that is like, sweet and, kind of unique. That's not like she can buy anything she wants. Like I guarantee you they're doing fine. Like
they might actually
she can
be
go to
in
Greece
Greece
if she wants to go to Greece.
Yeah, they might actually be in Greece right now. I heard some like rumblings online that they might be in Europe or in Greece right now, but they're probably not even posting about it because people are going to think that it was in reaction to the backlash he got from the apron video.
Right. Right.
Which kind of kills me because I'm like, they're just damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. But regarding the apron, I thought that was funny because even after, the second Times article was released and the audio was released, and Hannah ended up posting a video on Instagram and TikTok basically defending her family, defending her husband, saying that this reporter totally took advantage of them and misconstrued their life completely. And I really want to commend her for standing up for herself. And she's not, like I said, she's not a political person. She doesn't seem to be a confrontational person. She seems to just be enjoying her life. And it bothers people. And I think good for her for standing up for herself publicly. But when it came to the apron, I still kept seeing comments, even on that video. He still needs to take you to Greece. But what about the apron video? I even did a follow-up video and half my comments were, what about the apron? So the funny thing too is, I mean, you've been married for quite a while. Sometimes husbands aren't the best gift givers. Also, he might have thought that was
Don't get
hilarious.
me started on this.
Yes. Oh, I've got an example. My husband, I will say, I'm not even a good gift giver. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm the better gift giver. But my husband, he either nails it or he blows it. There's like no in between with him. He's never given just like a standard gift. One year, actually it was my first Mother's Day after having my son a few years ago. And my first Mother's Day, it was like the day before my birthday. And I opened my Mother's Day gift and pull it out, and it's literally a t-shirt with like a pizza on it, but the pizza is missing a slice. And then it came with a onesie with like the slice on the onesie for my baby. And that was it. I was like looking in the bag, like, okay, where are my tickets to Greece? Like, and it was sweet, and he meant well by it. But, sometimes husbands think that these things are like super funny, and, lucky for us, we don't have millions and millions of people watching our every move ready to criticize it, but I think it's funny. I think it was probably just a sense of humor.
My husband, he listens to the podcast, so he's going to hear this, but I've told him to his face, so I don't mind sharing it.
Yeah.
He is so good at helping around the house. Like, he'll cook dinner if he needs to, if I'm busy, or maybe I'm filming something at night, because sometimes some of the guests we have on, like, it just depends on what their schedule is, if they're super busy. And since my studio is in my home, like, the hours can be kind of wonky.
Yeah.
So he'll jump in and help wherever he needs. He's phenomenal at that. Like, right now, my studio is like also halfway his office, and he's working in a different room, so I can be filming in here and it's quiet. When it comes to gift giving, this man is so bad. I mean, and it's not even like he either nails it or he doesn't.
Yeah.
Occasionally there's something good, but I've gotten to the point, and we've been married almost 9 years now, where I'm like, just let me pick something out, because I know what I like. And he thinks that I'm going to like something, but I feel like it's always something I would have liked maybe 3 or 4 years ago, or like isn't cool anymore. Or I'll even drop hints. I'll send him links like, ooh, really like this necklace, thinking like, okay, you're definitely going to get the necklace for my birthday.
Or like your credit card info's already in there, ready for checkout.
Totally, nothing. They're like, it's so funny, and God bless him, because he's trying. He's like, here's something. And now we're kind of at the place where it's like, he's like, just tell me what you want. And I'm like, that's probably the best idea. Like, I'll pick it out. And same thing, like, we're not Ballerina Farm wealthy by any means. We're not even, I wouldn't even consider us wealthy. We're very just average American family. But, if I really want something really badly or need something, I'll go pick it out myself. So I don't really need anything, which is really great. But my gosh, some husbands, and that's another thing with the egg apron, like you said, it's maybe he just didn't do something great, and he knows that she can pick out whatever she wants. So I think a lot of this is due to feminism, and like, God forbid a woman actually want to be a mother or be a wife. What are some of the ways that you're seeing feminism kind of infiltrate young people? Because with PragerU, you guys work with young people all the time too. And some of your influencers that you have, or social media personalities that you have, are Gen Z. What are you seeing as or the ways that feminism is hurting young people, and the ways that you guys are combating it and trying to like bring attention to it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, PragerU does a lot in terms of just like social commentary. On a personal level, something I've noticed as someone who is unfortunately chronically online, just because of my job and the business we're in, I'm always tracking what's going on in society, culture, politics, so that I can bring ideas to our team. But one of the things that I've noticed that's really devastating to see is how you mentioned, dehumanizing motherhood at this point, or demonizing it, really, and trying to make it seem like motherhood is some horrible sacrificial thing where you're going to lose yourself, you're going to be miserable. Why would you want to live a life for someone else like that? And so now we're seeing this trend of young women online who are just buying into the, childless by choice movement, and this is not, I'm not referring to, I know that JD Vance is getting a lot of hate for this lately, and I'm not referring to the women who are unable to have children or things like that. Or the people that even just didn't meet the right person and always hoped to be a mom or hoped to be a wife. But I'm more so referring to the people who have made it their personality to hate on children, hate on moms, and take to the internet to do so. And we've seen this with something, and unfortunately it's not even just single people that are doing this. Some of the worst offenders of this, I feel like, are woke millennial moms online. They are the people who basically engage in something called toxic mom culture, which I believe Allie Beth Stuckey talked about quite a while ago, and it really just stuck with me. And now I feel like I can't help but scroll my feed without seeing toxic mom culture pop up, where it's all these moms who are either embarrassing their children online just to get some laughs from strangers on the internet, or moms who are just showcasing all the negatives of motherhood without the positives to try to persuade young women to not make the mistakes of becoming moms. And it's this very toxic, unfortunate thing that I'm sure you see, especially being part of the pro-life movement. You probably also see it through that lens where you're like, this is an implicit attack on motherhood.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of it is because a lot of moms, well, I mean, I think for sure, 100% it's toxic mom culture. And I do see some of the women doing it because they think it's kind of like relatable and it's
Yeah.
kind of funny. And, we all have hard days. There is
Yeah.
no one saying that motherhood is easy and it's perfect and you don't have hard days, you don't have bad days. You do, but you have that outside of motherhood too. There's no
Yeah.
life, there is no job, there's no reality where every day is a perfect day. I mean, maybe Ballerina Farm, and that's why people are mad at her. I don't know. But for the rest of us, there is no perfect life, regardless of where you are. And I see people trying to kind of be relatable, and they do talk negatively about motherhood. And it makes me so sad because a lot of times they're even like people who have the same beliefs as I do. I'm like, God, like, why are you saying like, oh, gotta have a glass of wine to be able to, get through the end of the day, or, my little crotch goblin's this, or, what it's like. You're making it look so bad when you know that when you hear their laughter or you have their arms around your neck or you get to hold them at night and sing them to sleep or whatever it is, you are so in love with that child. But when you show just this negative stuff to be relatable, it really gives people a false image. And we have all these young people coupled with, feminism, we have all these young people who think that motherhood is this like daunting, awful, horrific thing.
Yeah.
Because A, they should be climbing the CEO ladder or the corporate ladder, and B, it's miserable because you have to have a glass of wine to get through the end of the day. And it's just really disheartening to me because, you might not think that joke is, leading to abortion, but realistically, this culture and this like joking about motherhood and making fun of our kids and putting them on blast on social media, it really does over time. It changes people's perspective about motherhood, and it encourages people to not have kids, to hate family, to hate being a wife, and to abort children. I mean, there's no way around it that it does in some way, shape, or form affect us here in the pro-life movement.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you totally nailed it with, you can still have a sense of humor. I think you need to have a sense of humor in order to be a good parent. But there's a difference between having a sense of humor and also being honest about motherhood having a lot of hard days. Oh my gosh. I had a really great day on Wednesday. Yesterday was really rough with one of my kids. Yeah. And I can admit that without being a negative, horrible person because I'm not going and venting to the internet. It's, luckily I have a great support system in my life where, if I have a bad day, I can talk about it. And then it's on to the next because guess what? I would still take that bad day with my kids over any day without them. So unfortunately, a lot of women aren't seeing that side of things, though. They're only seeing the negative. So they're not seeing the positive, which greatly outweighs the negative. And so I hope myself, and I see you do a great job of it, and so many incredible women online that talk about it positively, but also realistically, which is important. But yeah, unfortunately, there is this war being waged. And this used to be a conspiracy theory, I feel like. And I think more people are realizing it, that there is this conspiracy that, there is this big movement to basically wage a war on families and specifically on children. And I mean, we even saw it about a year ago. Kamala Harris came out and said she was like listing off things that she wanted to do for the environment. And she even mentions, population reduction. And it was like these things that were conspiracy theories that some people are just saying the quiet part out loud now. And I think it's not just a matter of it's not just always a matter of Planned Parenthood. It's usually before it gets to that point, it's the social connotation of having kids, especially having kids unexpectedly. Oh, that's going to ruin your life. You're going to be drinking wine every night because you're so miserable. You're never going to have a career. You're never going to be able to do the things you want to accomplish. And then it's such an offensive thing to so many women who have, like yourself, had unexpected pregnancies. There's nothing more empowering than seeing women who have unexpected pregnancies that end up being incredible mothers and still have such satisfying and accomplished careers. And so I wish that more young people got to see that.
No, and that's the thing is like, I definitely, when I had my own unexpected pregnancy, I was terrified. Like, I mean, I can't, I mean, it's interesting. I had different emotions. I had, and the father wasn't really on board with me having the baby at the time. And I had fear, I had uncertainty, I had excitement, I had a little bit of everything. But I understand like the idea of motherhood can be overwhelming, especially when you're not prepared. But as soon as I heard the heartbeat and as soon as I held my baby, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is what living is all about. And I know that sounds crazy. And people are like, oh, how do you, your kids aren't your whole life. It was like, I have never felt more fulfilled than when I had my children. And it's like, I only lived for myself before and, only thought selfishly. You're thinking about yourself. And that doesn't mean that people don't go volunteer and think about other people too. But for the majority of your life, if you're single and you don't have kids, you're living for yourself. If you don't have a husband, you're not serving somebody or helping someone or, pouring into somebody else. You're kind of just pouring into yourself. And I feel like that's what I was doing. And when I realized how fulfilled I could be, it was just something so totally different. I think so many people don't talk about that. They just talk about the draining aspects of motherhood, which makes me so sad because sure, again, there are draining aspects of everything that you deal with. You go to work and you have draining days, my goodness, but your boss is not a cute little toddler who's going to make you laugh in 5 minutes and hug you and make it all melt away. Unfortunately, you're probably going to hate your boss for the next 2 weeks because you're mad. But there's something about motherhood is just so incredibly beautiful that I want to share that. And I'm kind of at a weird place where I've kind of stopped and you can relate to this because you don't really share your kids' faces on social media. And I've kind of stopped doing that and being a little bit more protective, a little bit more reserved in what I do share of my kids, A, because they don't consent to it. They're too young to consent. And B, because there's creepers out there and I get death threats and, it's just part of me wanting to protect them, but I do want to share those parts of motherhood. So that brings me to kind of my next question of like, what do you think that we can be doing better as people? We're millennials. I think Gen X could probably do a better job too. And there's some Gen Z people who do have kids of really like promoting motherhood and showing people how beautiful it is and kind of like debunking the lies of feminism and the patriarchy, is not coming to get you and they're not out to ruin your life. How can we be changing the lives of the young people and allowing them to see the truth of motherhood?
Yeah, that's like such a good question. I actually ask myself that all the time, and I've had a few different ideas of where I wanted to go with it. And, similar to yourself, I'm like very hesitant to share my young children on social media. I'll share them in like kind of roundabout ways where like they'll be in a picture, but it's like the back of them, which it's funny because I have toddlers. So it's not like I just take photos of the back of their heads. Half the photos I take of them, there's a back of the head photo because they're always moving. So I just like will post those on my public Instagram just because it's like, well, I've got them. So I'll just post those.
Totally.
And I try to occasionally like do posts about motherhood. I think I need to like lean into it more because I think there's a way to do it without being fake on social media, without being very negative on social media, and also without being cringy because I hate to say it. Like unfortunately, a lot of young women are also seeing, the very glorified kind of overly produced version of motherhood with a lot of these accounts. But there's a lot of women that are doing it really well. And although I personally don't feel comfortable sharing my kids on social media, I personally battle with, I see a lot of family accounts on social media that I like. And I do think they actually are doing something very positive, exposing young women to what a traditional family looks like. So you're never going to hear me really hate on those people because even though I personally have not made that decision, I totally understand. And I think there's actually some good that comes of it.
Right.
So I think that's part of it is like, honestly, just having these organic, open conversations and also just like showing the positive on social media, which doesn't mean showing a fake persona, but like if you are having a great day and I have so many nights where I'm exhausted, but I go to bed and I'm still end up staying up late because I'm just looking through photos of my kids from the day on my phone and just like having those sweet moments.
Oh, I miss them already.
Yeah, and you're like, oh man, am I gonna see them for a couple more hours? They're sleeping, but yeah, I think that's so incredibly important. And kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier, it's funny because everyone is always searching for something in life. You could be the most rich person, you could be the heir of an airline, like you could have so much wealth, you can have so much fame, you can have all these things, but the things that people search for the most, and there's been studies on this, is purpose. And I'm not saying that if you don't feel like you have a purpose, you should go get pregnant, but I am saying that there is an incredible amount of purpose that comes with parenthood that I think most parents can agree with, is whether you're having a bad day or not, that your day was purposeful because you made an impact on someone else. So I think that there is something to be said about that the reward of purpose really outweighs everything else. And along those lines too of what you were talking about earlier, everything is hard in life and you would never see, and this is what bothers me so much, is with the main narrative on social media about motherhood, you would never tell young women, hey, don't be a doctor or a lawyer. Like, that's so hard. You have to go to school for that. Like, you have to go into debt. It's so expensive. It's so hard. It's exhausting. You're not going to sleep that much. You never tell young women that because that would be anti-feminist. But then when you tell them, don't be a mom for all those reasons, it's like paraded all over social media.
No, that's so good. There was somebody who shared the other day, I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but their daughter said in class they wanted to be a mother. And the teacher said something like, you know, you can be more than just a mother. Yeah. And I thought that was so offensive. We're like, but if that's what she wants, why would you try to rip that from her? And what do you mean just a mother? You're raising literally the next generations, the next leaders, the next doctors, the next, you know, whatever. It just is mind-boggling to me that people think of it as just a mother.
Yes, I completely agree. And, you know, it's funny. So with the whole trad wife movement being so trendy on social media, I always call myself a bad trad because I have traditional values, but I'm really bad at fulfilling the stereotype just because I do work full time. And while that's primarily out of need, I have to work. I am thankful that I do something I really love a lot, but I feel so defensive and protective of stay-at-home moms because I think that there is nothing more rewarding, but also more hard than that. And it's also the most important job because the most important job you can have is really raising the next generation. And it's funny because you see all these politicians, you see all these people on the left, and they're always talking about, you know, how we're going to leave the climate for the future, how we're going to do these things for the future, but then they actually don't care about raising the future, unfortunately. And it's typically conservatives or at least traditional people with traditional values that really care about it.
Yeah. What future if you're aborting all of them or you're telling women to not have babies anymore? Like there is no future if you don't have children. And it's something is so interesting. You said earlier about, you know, there being purpose, and there really is such purpose in motherhood, in being a wife as well. And I think that's something that, you know, God forbid you say that you want to be a wife and that's
just
a
a
goal
wife,
of yours.
just a mom.
I can't imagine if that little girl, said, you know, being a wife and mother only. And it just, it's really sad to me. And I want to see young people, and I do think that I'm starting to see some people like have their eyes open to it because they're following people like Ballerina Farm, who it's like, okay, she didn't go to Juilliard. She decided to turn that down, which only like what? I think it was like minimal amount of people get in, 6, 7, 12. I don't know.
It was some
something
crazy
like
low statistic.
Yes, very low amount of people actually get in to Juilliard, and she didn't want to do it. And people are just so mind boggled, but that somebody could actually choose motherhood. And what I want to say to people is like, shut up and really focus on what you want. Don't let the noise of what's outside, like not shut up to the person, but like shut everything else up. Shut the noise off, shut social media off, shut everybody else's opinion off. Because what I see is a lot of people actually really do want that, but they're almost also embarrassed to say that that's what they want because they feel like, you know, people are going to jump down their throat. I did a poll one time that was like, how many people do you actually know who don't want children? Like who legitimately out the gate didn't want to get married, didn't want children. And the people, either it was 0, or they'd say, you know, like, whoa, I know this one person who didn't want kids, but ended up getting married and then decided they wanted to change their mind. Yeah. I think, and this doesn't include people who can't have them, or like you said, you know, maybe haven't met the person yet, but I don't know anybody who doesn't want children. So like really shutting off the noise of what's outside and people trying to tell you that you can't be just a mom or that motherhood isn't fulfilling or that it's not good enough. Because like you said, that is one of the hardest jobs that there is. I mean, truly, my husband, when I have to go out of town and he's got to be full-time dad 24/7 and he has no help, he's like, holy smokes, like there's this whole other level of appreciation for motherhood when a dad's got to step into that role and really do it. But yeah, it's hard. It's beautiful at the same time though. And you're a mom, you've got 2 littles. What has been one of the most surprising things for you, like stepping into motherhood that you didn't know that you would experience?
I think part of it is one of the most surprising things is how I've learned to embrace the mess, which sounds kind of cheesy, but I am a very tidy person in general. And so having 2 toddlers, our house is such a mess every night. And I used to get so stressed out because, you know, after work and the kids and dinner and bedtime, I would be exhausted and I'd look at this huge mess that the house was left in. And I used to get so annoyed when I had to pick up the toys and clean the kitchen and do all the things. And my husband said something to me. He was like, there's gonna be a day where there's no mess and it's gonna be so sad. And ever since he said that to me, like, I can have the worst day and I will smile, like, while picking up the toys, because I just look at, like, oh gosh, I'm gonna get emotional. I'll look at, like, just like the funny things that the kids did with the toys, and like it just brings me so much joy. And I never thought a mess could bring me so much joy. Or like when we eat food and just put all their food on the little high chairs and they get to like pick at it and stuff. Oh my God, I didn't think I'd get emotional about this. It's so funny. Someone asked me this a while ago and I said, like, probably the mess, and I like never really went into why. But yeah, it breaks my heart because I just feel like there's so many women who are being lied to and manipulated. And I think, like you said, there's a lot that do want to have kids, but either because they haven't met the right person yet, or they just don't want to seem like an outlier. They've just decided to tout that they're childless by choice, when I actually don't think a lot of them really want that. And it makes me sad because I think there is like a very big, sorry, I keep looking off because I have so many thoughts I want to get in order, but there's unfortunately a big campaign against moms staying home. And what's interesting to me is I went on a trip a couple years ago. This was a year before I even had my son. And I was on a trip with a bunch of my girlfriends. At this point, only one of us had kids. One of them had kids, and there was 6 of us. And 2 of us came from homes where both our parents worked. My parents both had to work my whole life. My mom used to always want to be a stay-at-home mom. It was like aspirational back then. And I feel like I'm so surprised that it's not anymore. So anyways, like 2 of us came from homes where both parents worked. And then the 4 people who had stay-at-home moms, the 4 girls on this trip that had stay-at-home moms, were talking about how they could never be a stay-at-home mom, because why would you waste your diploma and why would you waste your degree and all your potential by staying home? And I thought that was so incredibly heartbreaking, because I couldn't imagine if their moms had heard them say that, considering they all made so many sacrifices to stay home with them, and then to have daughters that grew up to decide that that isn't acceptable and it's actually like a negative. So that made me really sad, because I still look at stay-at-home moms as like really being aspirational, and not that you have to like, reach a certain level financially, because there's so many stay-at-home moms that really like live so simply in order to make it work, because they prioritized it for their family. And I have so much respect for that. So I'm like just really passionate about this topic.
It's almost like the grass is greener, like when we see a lot of people moving back toward the homesteading life, or, I'm gardening, I'm growing my own food, I'm getting more crunchy. I don't like what we're seeing at the grocery stores. People were like, it was so inconvenient to have to grow your food, to raise animals, to have livestock. And like this convenience thing was something so beautiful, but now we're like, actually, it's really not that great. And so a lot of people are moving back to it. And that's kind of similar with motherhood, of like, oh, my mom was just a stay-at-home mom. She didn't really do anything. And then you have the people who are working. You're like, actually, they're doing a lot and really pouring into their children. And it's interesting. My mom had to work my whole childhood out of necessity. She didn't have the option to stay home. But she always says, if I could go back and do it again, I would get a flippin' trailer and I would raise my kids at home, and I would not work. I mean, like, I don't care how I had, not that there's anything wrong with the trailer, but we had a regular house, and obviously trailers are less expensive. So she's like, I would go seek out a less expensive lifestyle to be with my children. And that just really impacted me, because it's like, she lived that and she wanted to be with her children. She's like, I'd drop you off at daycare and you guys would be crying, and I'd get back in my car and I would start crying. And I've done the daycare thing. I have worked before. I haven't always been a stay-at-home mom, and I do work part-time right now. But I've worked full time, and I have sent my son to daycare. And when I was going to school, he would go to daycare. So I'm very familiar with that lifestyle. This isn't me, saying that one way is better than another, but it was very profound hearing her say, like, if I could do it all again, I would live far more frugally just to be able to be with my kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so true. And this is why I love having these conversations with both stay-at-home moms and working moms, because I feel like there's a lot of people who feel this, and there's like, that's why I call it like the bad trad, is what I have been kind of, I guess, branding it as, where it's like everyone just shares a common vision, which is to give your kids the best opportunity and to make sure that they are raised knowing faith and family are the most important things. And now I think it's funny, because I think the trend and the movement has gotten so popular, and it's been effective when you see the media attacking it so much, as they did with Ballerina Farm. I mean, it's funny, this is kind of a similar example, but like different. Did you follow the Olivia Copo situation with her wedding dress?
Oh, yes. People were freaking out about it.
People took her remarks in this interview that she did about the dress, being conservative and traditional, and
Yeah.
just took it to such a whole new level that I thought there's no way this would have warranted the same reaction just a couple of years ago. But I think because things like traditional lifestyles, whether that's trad wives or whatever that looks like, homesteading, those things are becoming so popular again that I think the mainstream is getting a little threatened by it. So what do they do when they get threatened? They start the attacks. Which is why I think we saw the attack on Ballerina Farm, on Olivia Copo. I'm trying to think of who else, Nora Smith, all these other really influential people online.
Yeah. God forbid anybody, embrace conservatism or modesty or motherhood or anything like that. Before I let you go, tell us, since you are a working mom, I work part-time, you work full-time. How do you balance motherhood and work? Because there are people who listen to the show, there's a little bit of everybody. There's stay-at-home moms, there's part-time working moms, there's full-time working moms, there's single moms. Give everybody a little bit of advice on just how to figure out how to balance it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I had the perfect answer for that, but I don't, because every day
I feel like
is
that's
so
what we
different.
all say. We're we're just winging it.
Yeah, unfortunately, people say that, you can't have it all, and I really don't think you can. I know that there's a lot of powerful women out there that will say you can have it all, but you really can't. But I think that women, all of us in general, really struggle with guilt. And sometimes guilt is a good thing because there's a reason we're feeling it. But also, I know stay-at-home moms who also really struggle with guilt. And sometimes we struggle with working mom guilt. Sometimes we struggle with stay-at-home mom guilt. So I think that's kind of a consistent thing across. I think it's just in our nature to feel guilty if we are short of perfection. But I think I've come to realize that as a working mom, there are going to be days where I feel like a rock star employee. And on those days, I'm probably not going to feel like the best mom. And there are going to be days where I feel like a rock star mom. And on those days, I'm not going to feel like a great employee. And at the end of the day, being a rock star mom matters more. And I can still be a good employee, but I have to remember that if God forbid something happened to me, someone would fill my position at work, and no one could really fill my position at home if something did happen to me. So I always keep that in perspective. It helps me give myself a little grace and also prioritize my life better, where my kids and my husband are first, no matter what. But I'm also very lucky, thankfully I do have to work, but I'm thankful to be doing something that I'm very passionate about, that I love so much. And I also now do it from home. So that is honestly a huge help. And so for my husband and I, while we work, my husband works earlier hours, I work later hours, the hours that we overlap. We have an amazing nanny who helps us, and she's been just amazing. But for us, we've made the financial commitment where a huge portion of our money goes towards having in-home care, because I like the kids being home and knowing where they are at all times and not dropping them off at a daycare. And I like that they have the one-on-one attention for the however many hours that they're not either with me or my husband or both of us. So that's just been a priority. It's the reason I don't have a lot of flashy clothes. I definitely don't have a flashy car or a lot of flashy things, because I've just chosen that that's more of a priority. So I think for moms, it's a matter of, balancing family and work and understanding that family always comes first, but also balancing how you spend your time and money. So I also spend money on things that will save me time. So, I do the cleaning every night at our house, but once a month I pay for a housekeeper to come and deep clean the house, because that's essentially like a half day job or a full day job a lot of the time. Totally. And that's a free day that I could have with my kids. So for me, it's worth it to, maybe not get the newest pair of shoes or the newest trendy workout outfit and put that towards a housekeeper so that I can take my kids to the park that Saturday rather than being home cleaning. Yeah. So I think it's just being able to prioritize, and I feel very lucky that I'm in a position to do that. I know not everyone is, but I think it's kind of figuring out how to spend your money and your time effectively to maximize the time with your kids.
Yeah. No, I do think that there are a lot of people who don't realize that they are in a position where they probably could do similar. It just means making sacrifices in other places, whether it's time-wise, whether it's money. I see, I don't want to say any names because I'll throw the people under the bus, but I have friends or family or people who would say, oh my gosh, I'm just so busy. I don't have the time to do any of this stuff. I'm like, you're on the phone probably 4 hours a day talking about diddly squat. Like the time is there, you're just filling it a different way. Or, I don't have the money to do that. I can't do that. I wouldn't be able to have a nanny, or I can't stay home, or I can't, whatever it is. And that's not everybody's goal or priority necessarily, but how many times are we buying the brand new outfits or an outfit for every occasion, or going through Starbucks, or going through a drive-through, or spending money where we don't necessarily need to? I think a lot of it is about prioritizing, which is kind of what you're saying, is like, this is what is a priority for our family. So if I have to make concessions somewhere else, I'm going to. And I feel similar. And it's tough because, like, as a podcast host, you see a lot of podcast people, like, they have a different outfit every single time, and they have, you know, like, everything is like flashy, and I don't have all of that. I don't have a different shirt for every single time I interview people, and sometimes it's like, well, I wish I had that, and then other times it's like, what for what? Like, who cares? Nobody's probably even noticing that. So you're so right. Sabrina, thank you for joining us, like, breaking down Ballerina Farm. I actually recently went to go follow her because I was just like, ugh. Feminists are making me mad, so I'm gonna go follow her. Just
you like
because
vote with your
feminists
follow.
are making me mad. And I think it's beautiful what she's doing. And yes, family life is chaotic, but it is so beautiful. And I really appreciate you talking about it, talking about feminism, the patriarchy, which isn't even actually a thing in my mind, and taking time out of your day. Thank you, I guess, to PragerU for letting us borrow you for a little bit.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.